welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man.
You we good?
Yeah, just a little adjustment. I may come in here every once in a while for a tiny
I may lock the door.
Nothing to,
I'm just kidding.
Nothing to worry about. I'll flag down if there's a technical.
Okay, all good.
But you guys are ready to go.
Okay. Yeah, just scoot a little bit, just so you're. But I'm sure we're plenty good on the mics. But hey, anyway, thanks for jumping on the Super Life podcast.
Very excited to be here.
Stoked. We have known each other on social for a bit and resonate with a lot of the same things. And
Quite a bit.
yeah, and I love number one, the Planet Doctor.
Thanks.
Such a great kind of sets the tone for what you care about, you know?
Yeah, it's actually my federally registered trademark.
No shit.
Yeah. No one can call themselves that. Isn't that awesome? I just got that years ago.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, what led to that being a kind of a symbol for you?
The moniker. Really, it's my life as an academic, you know, political ecologist, environmental geographer. I thought, well, people have doctors, and the planet needs a doctor. You know, who's going to talk for the planet? And so I thought, well, I'm trained, I've traveled, maybe that's me, you know. And it's a good name anyway, but I feel like that's part of my role.
Yeah. And you've traveled quite a bit.
Quite a bit, yeah. When I was young, for fun and backpacking, and then for research, lived on a few continents, went to 40-some countries, and there's certainly people who have been to more, but and then now it's mostly for work or family stuff, but back then it was just that crazy, you know, $10 a day, death-defying, you know, getting sick, eating street food type travel, which was great.
Yeah, we have I spent 15, 20 years superfood hunting.
Right.
In my 30s, so it's like roughly around 40 countries too, and it's like that energy at that time is just. And then once you travel, it's kind of like it's such a fulfilling. You can't find those things on search engines. You know, the experiences you have when you travel, and the real people, and the real situations, and the real environmental situations. Like that's kind of the whole thing that was like, holy shit, like this is what's really going on in Africa. This is what's really going on. Not that I know everything of what's going on, but at least you're seeing India and Africa and these massive continents, and China and Southeast Asia. And
and we call that ground truthing. It's like you see all the data, you see it, but you're there and you see it. And that shocked me too. And when I saw so many hundreds of miles on a bus of burning rainforest, I know that sweet, terrible smell and too well. And just, some of the, the squattervilles and these massive megalopolises, and it's just, it makes you go, whoa, what is going on?
Right.
The data can't convey.
Yeah, the data can't convey, and the search engines can't convey, and the information. Even on social, a picture doesn't do things justice. Videos don't do things justice. I'm always finding myself like less and less interested on social media, and less in a certain sense, because it's like even hanging out in Sedona over the weekend, I'm like, I purposely didn't touch social in 7 days. Not even one.
7 days.
Yeah, which is
well done.
And I just was like, and I'm sitting there going, oh, this would be a good, I barely took pictures. And it was just this, a picture can't take in this massive monolith of red mountain here. It can't take it in.
Yeah.
So I have so many questions. I'm so curious as to, because I know my journey when I saw things, it moved the needle both environmentally and the disparaging gaps between water, power, food, shelter, gaps in the world. And I was having mangoes underneath a tree in Kenya with Obama's grandmother. Wild, weird thing that happened. And we were helping her and her village get clean water. and it's cool it's not cool, it's the wrong word, but it was necessary. But you're sitting there going, the president's grandmother is in an area where they don't have clean water. The president of the United States, and you're like going, in early 2000s, I'm like, how is it possible that you can throw a dart at Africa and pretty much in that region, a bunch of people are not going to have good water, they're not going to have good food, and you're like going,
yeah.
And then the same can go for almost, India and things like that. And I'm like, I scratch my head, even to this day, to see this massive, when you see the industrial complex standing up on billions and billions and billions of dollars, and we could solve so much of this stuff. And yet there's a concerted effort not to, in a sense.
There is.
Not that we need to go down, we can go down any path we want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talk about and write about those things a lot. And I always say it's expensive to solve the world's problems, but it's more, we're putting more money into funding the problems,
right?
To funding them.
Yeah.
It's like we subsidize, conventional agriculture. We subsidize fossil fuels.
Right. Subsidize meat.
Take that money, meat, the big, and just put it over here. Military budgets, So it's unbelievable how easy it would be to solve. That's actually what got me into a lot of the environmentalism. And in my angle, I saw, hey, look, we have the technology largely. We need to still evolve.
Sure.
And we have the money. We don't have the belief systems to say, let's act now, and the cultural backing. And so I kind of lean on that side of it. And that's what I did a lot of work in the UK with, talking at Oxford about, and taking that angle. And they said, oh, this is interesting, But yeah, that's huge growth we need there, because we know what to do. Why are we not doing it? The same thing with your health. You got to go into your subconscious. It's like, know what to do. Why are you not doing it?
Well, you're an interesting bridge between political ecology, being a professor, being fully into this, and then we'll dissect all of this stuff. But also, you have your personal journey of your own spiritual awakenings, and then how do you wrestle with that and ground that into the other, because I also can feel like I'm schizophrenic in certain areas of my life, going, okay, this is thing, and then I don't really want to talk about this at this point. This is very personal, and this, but yet it's all,
you can't separate them, you know. But it's
here you can, but it's not separate.
But in certain venues, you're like, I'm this guy now.
Yeah.
And like you, we're both athletes. And I've shown up in the world as an athlete and as an academic. And those were pillars of my life. But there was this awakening I had 20 years ago, and it was too much for people when I first shared it. Let's leave it at that. And so I thought, well, not out of fear, but more out of, I don't want to force feed them this. I'll just try to shine my light. But now I realize many things have shown me, hey, it's time. People need to talk about this more, and maybe they need a little guidance, and hopefully I could offer that, or even just hearing my story. And so anyway, I'm open to that now, and it is like it's a massive part of me that I haven't really shared in earnest.
Right.
But again, the world is evolving rapidly in that way, and people are waking up fast.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I mean, not to reduce it down, but there is a huge population of people that is what it is, and they're taking life as it is and being fed algorithms, and it's no judgment, because it's just like there's a multiverse going on.
They're taking the blue pill.
Yeah,
they're going back into illusion.
Yeah, and then there's this other side that over the years there seems to be more and more questioning and more awakening and more like, you know. So where you're at now is, I mean, we can go down, because I'd love to hear about the political ecology route and what you see.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear your take, because I am, and I'll put it here in this bucket, because I think about this all the time, is like as much as I feel so inadequate in certain respects asking this question of how do we literally create a new reality, right? And build so that the other becomes obsolete, you know, and at the same time, I want to hear your perspective on the ecology side of things, and then also your awakening side, and then how you wrestle, or moreover, maybe how you flow with that now.
Love to.
Yeah.
Well, let me give a really quick summary of what the ecology side is. And because I try to keep it simple, there's so much going on. It's like, oh, don't use plastic straws, don't use this and that, and we get overwhelmed, you know? Yeah. And, I put it this way. If we can change how we make food, generate food and generate energy, those are so huge. Yeah. And those have ramifications in all these other areas. If we can relocalize food, energy, and a lot of things, because late capitalism separated production from consumption, which allows for all of these egregious sort of imbalances. Right. And if we can, I call it, change our hearts, not our minds. We throw data at everything, and it's like, oh yeah, wow, all these polar bears are dying. Oh, that's too bad. And it's just data. But if we can get, and I obviously care about the polar bears, but I'm saying that's a good example of bringing our heart into it. But we need to change our hearts, get into our subconscious. I call it, with men, I say, to get men who might not be interested in climate change, I say, defend your home, defend your land, defend your territory. That's a primal. That's
something we all can get behind.
Yeah, and not to be so genderized, but with women, it's like, protect your family, be the mama bear. How do you do that? You read your book, Fatal Conveniences, and stop the toxins coming in. You defend your land against polluters. And so, that's a relocalization.
Right.
One really interesting thing, overlap between changing how we eat, let's just say organic regenerative, is, I say, save the good bacteria. So if we just don't put pesticides into that soil, those pesticides kill the good bacteria in the soil, and they kill the good bacteria in our gut.
Right.
So we save both. And in our gut and in the soil, there's the same 4 categories of microbiota, which you know them. They evolve together because we're eating out of this soil. And so it just, when we make one small positive change, and it's aligned, it creates these massive ramifications.
Right.
So, and my family still we've had a farm in Nebraska for 5 generations. We're still there. And I talked to and it's a cattle feedlot with corn and wheat as well we grow. And I talked to my uncle and my cousins about it. And, sometimes we butt heads because I'm organic and I'm eating plants and, but it's interesting because, I teach them a little bit and they teach me a lot.
Sure.
They're on the ground and they
sure.
say, well, what you don't see is this, and that. Mm-hmm. And they tell me they're using less and less chemicals, which is very good, and things like that.
Well, it isn't, and as I've come to be humbled in when you actually look into something, it's not black and white. Yeah. It's like you need to work, and I love that you brought it up. You need to actually work with existing farmers, especially infrastructure. Yeah. And then realize that it's not just regenerative and organic is over here. I mean, there's massive movements going on right now with some big corporations moving to regenerative.
They are.
And no one knows about it, but they're doing it. Yeah. So there is some cool things going on because I think writing's on the wall. Like, if when you're reducing things down, inevitably you're going to have a massive side effect, and it's going to run out. When you divorce nature, I guess is it's naturally implosion that has to happen. Yeah. So it's like it's an economic sense to economic, environmental, health, you name it. But since we've propagated the god up of profit, if you do the numbers, it's actually infinitely more profitable to bet on nature.
Yeah. Well, yes, and fortify this means of production, sorry to use that phrase, but which is natural ecosystems. I mean, fortify them for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
And really, it's, you hinted at something so important, and that's, we've become separate, of course, from nature in many ways, and from our spiritual side in some ways, and even separate body from mind.
Yeah.
And that's, this European Enlightenment philosophies, some Abrahamic religion philosophies. And so it's deeply inculcated into us, and we don't even realize it. And I always say that the beliefs that affect us the most are the ones that we're not aware of,
right.
That are just ground zero.
Mm-hmm.
And that really affects our relationship to nature. And, capitalism certainly does. That was and I don't want to get into it, but my dissertation was about how nature and capitalism interact. And that's again, ground zero. But yeah, we've become so separate. We harvest from nature. It's this thing to conquer. It's this, sovereignty and dominion. And so we're just slowly waking up to the fact that, if this soil is all ruined and we just keep parasitically moving on, that's not a good long-term model. And we've done that we've always done that on planet Earth. There's an incredible book about it called Dirt. It's just that we have enough people now that we can't do it anymore.
Right.
We've reached a critical mass.
Right.
And in a way that's good, because we're realizing, we actually have to change now.
Yeah, it's extractive rather than, and like you said, you can get away from it with it for a while, but but also the narrative breaks down when people, take parts of it, like when they say climate change and they add a bunch of stuff onto it, and then it's hard to trust it. Whereas I love it too, because we're similar in that approach. Like if you realize that most people, if you said, hey, if I could have your family have water, power, food, shelter, and sovereignty, who's gonna push back on that, right?
Right.
Who in their right mind is like, yeah, man, you could get the biggest, brawniest guy going, yeah, hell yeah, let's do that. Or you could also get the most passive going, yeah, that makes sense. Let's decentralize. Let's do all that stuff.
Yeah.
But these big conglomerates are it again, it takes a bit to break this thing down. So,
Does.
So from your perspective, what's from a ecological standpoint, what do you think some of the steps that we can take to integrate a little better?
So, we all have to get our hands back in the soil. And you talk about this a lot, and you're lucky enough to have, and you've cultivated this, but space near you. I live in central London. There's no space for this, but community gardens, local gardens, backyard gardens, get our hands back in the soil. It reminds us that we have a relationship with nature. It also, localizes production a bit better. Incredible stories out of, say, Detroit, where there's these urban wastelands that turned into organic farms. I interviewed a lot of those farmers for one of my past books. It's amazing. So this sort of like real powerful relocalization. There's community choice energy and, local microgrids. Interviewed people doing those in Africa, but even East Coast, where again, you're funding it yourself. You're making money off of the extra production. It builds communities. One thing I'll say also is we have to look at, as a geographer, I think about scale. We talk a lot about the individual scale, like what can I do? And then let's say corporate or government scale. But the community scale is kind of skipped over. It's incredibly powerful. That's really the scale that matters for the last 10,000 years. You know what I mean? But history doesn't really tell stories that way. But you're just big enough to be able to pool money and do something with that, make a solar array, put up some wind. And you're just small enough to use your word, which I love that you use it all the time, sovereign. So think on the community scale and see what you can do. And it brings together neighbors as well. One big problem is that we just don't talk to our neighbors. I live in a building. I live on such a dense street. I just figured out yesterday that I think about 600 people live on my one little block in London. and I'm very outgoing, and I don't really know many of them, you know? Anyway, yeah, so local scale, community, get our hands back in the soil. Obviously, you know, renewable energies. I mean, that's what pours out of me right there. We have to work on those big and small scales too. I mean, you vote for people that are going to do the right thing, and you change your own personal habits.
Mm-hmm.
We both agree about eating largely plant-based. I don't like to, quote unquote, force feed that to people, but the numbers are just so unbelievably positive for the planet and for our bodies, and it's not for everybody. And I always say, hey, and I think you kind of share this, just kind of move in that direction.
Yeah.
You know?
Eat more plants.
Just eat more plants.
However you want, just eat more plants.
Yeah.
More fiber, more colors, more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the proliferation of that too is like, if I'm growing tomatoes, a tomato plant is so damn abundant that you're like, oh, share it with your neighbor, share it with your friends, share it with, like, you know, it's, and then every tomato's got hundreds of seeds, and it's like, that's nature at its best.
Yeah.
Like,
and nothing's better than homegrown tomatoes. Like store-bought, nothing like it.
It's crazy. It's like every plant is so giving in its ability. So, you know, that again, nature has the blueprint.
Yeah.
But we're, you know, I think it's like 93% of our lives are inside and disconnected and
well, and I always say it's all built into the system. I mean, you eat these plants that are grown out of the earth, so they have antioxidants. Animal products have some, but I think that's a residual from just eating plants their whole life. And so antioxidants obviously counteract oxidation process, and then we get out into nature, and you're no better proponent of that from your videos. You know, antioxidation, negative ions, sunlight. I mean, it's like you say, it's all built into the system.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it is rocket science, but the habits are not.
right.
You know.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and you said too, it's like that turning from the mind into the heart too. And that, you know, this whole society seems to, I gotta do more. I gotta think more. I gotta produce more. And it's kind of divorced of rest, recovery, contemplation.
Yeah.
When you actually have to have that.
Yeah.
And I just did a kind of a release of, his name was Dr. Picard, who talked to Andrew Huberman. And I never did this before. I listened to Andrew's podcast with him, and he was talking about mitochondria, and he said it in a way that I never have been taught. And these mitochondria are absolutely, and this is one of the top mitochondria scientists. He's like, no, they're listening. They're not just a powerhouse. And they got into psychological listening, flow state of the mitochondria, and they have to have rest. So it's like this little thing that we've just put over, it's a powerhouse of the cell, and we eat good food and blah, 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 and it just produces this energy. And it's
3D mechanistic.
Yeah, and it's like absolutely not the case.
Wow.
It's a conductor of a flow of energy.
Yeah.
And even they were even talking about how you're in a flow state that is representative of this little muse of a mitochondria being able to flow. And even going into the chi of traditional Chinese medicine, and it starts to mitochondria at the core of it. So the point is that the more you look into this stuff, the more
magical it becomes.
Yeah, it's and so that is energy, that is flow, that is heart, that is like, so what are we doing? And it was very clear that you can't just work out or do things and not have a recovery state. You know, so this rest, this contemplation, this meditation takes on this whole new level of us moving forward. It's not just GDP, produce, stress yourself out, stay in that state of...
And that's very Western and really very American. Living in England now for a few years, 4.5 years, it helps me to see that America is so badass in so many ways, and I would never bash America. It's just a comparison.
Yeah.
UK is less constantly go, go, go. They get up a little later. Coffee shops open a little later. Rush hours a little later. And first I was like, what the hell? 6 o'clock, I'm ready to go. I was standing in the middle of the street. Literally, I was like, I need to sit down at a coffee shop and start typing,
Right.
But so Americans, we push. And in some ways that puts us ahead. But in some ways it's just manic.
Yeah.
And then you can get to the other extreme where there's societies where it's a little too sluggish and you get going. I think UK gets it pretty right, the balance. Some would argue with that. But I absolutely agree. And I was just reading about Rupert Sheldrake. I don't know if you've read his stuff 20 years ago, morphic resonance fields. And he's talking about how just it's like a cloud storage for human beings and for nature and our memories and even our DNA. And he's saying how that can affect things like mitochondria. It's just this energetic realm. Again, it's not so mechanistic and three-dimensional. And also that mitochondria, I've just read this, I feel like a novice, have their own DNA. They evolved separately from us, So it's like, clearly we need to look into that more.
Yeah, and almost they have kind of a bacterial evolutionary start. Like,
yes.
And then they become us or part of us, and then be providing this ecological necessity for us to conduct energy of every cell, and the heart has more, and the brain has more, and it's mind-boggling.
Well, and everybody's talking about that now. I saw your book on the shelf, Good Energy, which I just read as well. It's all about mitochondrial dysfunction, and that's the thing now, and we should be becoming aware of it. So I'm glad you're bringing it up, and it's so subtle. I guess that's sort of your point. It's so subtle.
Exactly. And so this awakening that you've had, you professor and political ecologists and studying real shit going on in the world and everything else. But at the same time, I also feel this, like, this year has been one of the hardest years of my life in terms of looking at some stuff and healing some stuff.
Oh, really?
Gnarly. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Incredible. And I can allude to it or talk about it a little bit, but it's led to some of the greatest kind of unpacking of stuff that I'm like, God, I'm 55 and still unpacking stuff from my birth and stuff like that. And whatever it is, it's the time to do it, like, without questioning stuff. And I know for me, I demand, not out of stress or whatever, I just demand more out of my life in stepping up into the highest expression that I can. And it seems to me that's similar to you, because I don't think spiritual awakenings happen if you're not on a soul level kind of going, hey man, there's more to this thing. You've probably been a little different. Been this sensory perception. So what happened with you and what's emerging now?
Sure. And we can go at this any way you want. I'll give like a 2-minute summary of the arc of it, and then I have all of the stages, which I can condense, because I kind of also want to give people a guide, because it's just so mysterious, and not that theirs will be just like mine, but I mean, basically I had been super spiritual kid, and then just craving awakening, fascinated with this idea of enlightening, and just begging God for years and years and years, begging, like, show me everything, show me behind the curtain, let's do this, screaming up into the sky when I was camping, just forever and ever. And finally it hit me, the lightning bolt hit me when I was 31, and I just cracked open, and everything changed within a few days and didn't come back online for 3 or 4 years. My resting pulse doubled for a year and a half. Jeez. I never slept more than 3 hours a night. Never. Often went 2 or 3 nights without sleep. I was feeling shockwaves through my body often. Grinded my teeth down. Hair started to go gray. Left my girlfriend, my job, my apartment. All of this within a few days just totally shifted.
Whoa.
And then that carried on. And then it was really just this light that hits you. And it gives you this bliss because you're in this light, and it also burns away all that's not the light, and that is very, very painful. And so I was having, experiencing astral travel. I became very clairaudient. I was taking dictation from spirit guides, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. One time I went into my childhood home, this was here in LA, to visit my mom during my awakening, and I went into my bedroom and I just laid down and I lost track of time and I just went into other dimensions, and I was just floating out there, and I did that a lot. Came out of the room and I said, Mom, for like 3 hours, I think, I was just in other dimensions. She put her arm on my shoulder. She said, no, Greg, you were in there for 4 days.
What?
And I was like, what? Yeah, so I was just gone. That happened a lot. And so I was just in other dimensions, and I lost the ability to function in the third dimension. Anyway, when I finally settled back in 4 or 5 years later, the hurdles that used to be there were gone, and so my life just accelerated, And I went back, started my PhD, got it in record time. I got a full-time professorship. I wrote 2 books. I got married. I had 2 kids. I became top-ranked master's sprinter. Like, all these things just went, because there was nothing in the way. It was just my choice, my decision, and then it would just happen, And I thought, whoa, this is something. And then, again, I didn't want to share I shared about my journey, and then it was too much for people. And so I said, well, I'll wait. And so that's the short version.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's I can relate from a 20,
tell me.
There's a 25 years ago, I did an ayahuasca. I'd never done a drug in my life, and I knew it. I was supposed to do that. And not that I need to get into all of this, but I did it, and it was blissful, and it showed me everything and more. Showed me my soul, validated every intuition in about 3 seconds, and it just took me on this journey. But then my intention was different. I did it again, and again, and then one more time, and it threw me into a realm that I felt like I had kind of no business. I didn't have the tools, and so I was a bit I couldn't, similar to you, I couldn't function.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information coming all the time, 24/7, and I sort of try to go to sleep and just kind of
How long was that phase?
That was a concentration of about a month to 6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And
it's intense.
And then I started kind of trying to call myself back because I was like, I can't function. Like, I don't even know how to pee. Like, it was just really intense. And I don't want to scare people to you have to go through awakenings like this, but
Right.
similar to you, I give it to me. It's
very cavalier. It's our football guy approach. It's just head on, boom.
Yeah.
And I realized I was too cavalier because when it hit me, it hit you, it was way more than I could handle.
Right.
It's like asking to catch a 6-foot wave and a tsunami comes.
Yeah.
And then you're just...
And you haven't even surfed the 6-foot wave yet.
Right. Right. And, so, it's also why I say heaven and hell are accessible here. In whatever that means, I think it's a misperception that we wait and we go to some other dimension after we die and then they're accessible. No, they're accessible here.
Yeah.
We just haven't tuned our receptors enough to perceive all of the dimensions that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do, yes, you can go there. And when this light really hits you, you are transported to places for hours or days that's I would call heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And I had such anguish for such extended times, and it sounds like you did too. And there's many versions of that that I would call some sort of experience of earthly hell.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this line and I'm no biblical scholar, but there's a line in Matthew that appears a lot, and it's when people would do wrong, they would be cast into the darkness where there was weeping and gnashing of teeth. And I thought, oh my God, I've never heard a better description of what happened to me. And I was there for months, that really difficult part, I was literally crying and grinding my teeth. I was like, wow, that's exactly, and I was separated from God. I just felt it so palpably. And I thought, so I've experienced some version of heaven and hell. And I say, people that have gone through a full awakening, whatever, I call mine Kundalini because that's the best description. Mm-hmm. You've been stretched so much that you've seen so much bliss that your default setting is joy. You realize no matter what's going on, chaos, problems, underneath it, the universe is always smiling at you, like everything's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And you've also had so much pain that you have a natural compassion for the pain in other beings. Mm-hmm. You can't not once you've had that pain. Mm-hmm. That's my belief. Mm-hmm. And that's how you tell if someone's been through it, really been through it. They're stretched and they have those two extremes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, I don't know about you, but I certainly now realize that I can gently, habitually contact those areas, which I do every day, every morning. I'm excited to wake up. I'm excited to go into those spaces and ask questions in it and like facilitate my own, oh, wow, that's interesting. I have my own technique of accessing that. Mm-hmm. And that's where then discipline over time really matures instead of, at 30 years old, give it to me, and the lightning bolt beats the shit out of me for a little bit, and then the ego fights and all of this stuff, and it doesn't have to be that way. So, yeah. And I think you're teaching that too. You're kind of moving 100%. Into that, like, you don't have to do it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll run through, if I can, just the basic steps, sure. But I completely agree that there's so much fear and mystery around these awakenings. And they're a little bit scary, and they're also not talked about for various reasons. Yeah. And so I said, it's time for me to help steer others, give them an option of, here's the basic pillars. I'll walk you through it with me, and let's have a beautiful awakening. And it's going to be challenging no matter what, but let's take away the unnecessary delays, the unnecessary life disruption, and make it more enjoyable and really also quicker. Mine was slowed down a lot by unnecessary factors.
Right.
So yeah, first, there's just this general, you raise your energy. This is where a lot of people are right now. They're sort of riding this wave on the planet where you read good books, you get around good people, you go into nature, you plug energy gaps, you try to push out, negative energy or avoid it a little bit so that you can elevate your energy. Mm-hmm. Not avoid it, but just kind of minimize. Some people want to go deeper into illusion when they feel the light coming. They go back into mainstream food, mainstream education, mainstream religion, and that's comforting to them, and that's fine. They'll be there as long as they want. And then people riding the wave, and then there's people who are, I would call, true trailblazers in this space. Next phase is you take the red pill. You're like, hey, I'm ready. I'm going to catalyze this awakening. For most people, that comes from a crisis or a moment of pain in their life. Mm-hmm. For me, it was just like years of deep desire, and it was really cavalier in me. And so I always say, and I'll give this little tidbit, sort of how you just said it, but rather than saying, show me everything, I always say, I preface it now and I say, if I'm talking to God or spirit guides, please give me gentle, clear guidance. Right. Because if you ask for it, you're going to get it. And so next is, and a lot of these you'll recognize and a lot of people recognize, and this is my own framing.
Yeah.
But learn to speak the language of the universe, which is signs and symbols and dreams and numbers and all of this coming at us. Mm-hmm. Nietzsche said, those who were dancing were thought to be insane by those who couldn't hear the music. And that's just so true. And a good friend of mine, pretty prominent neuroscientist, Tara Schwartz, she says, well, there's value tagging, there's your reticular activating system, so she puts neuroscience behind it, and basically how you filter through all that's going on and notice and imbue emotion into the things that matter to you, basically noticing the signs.
Right.
And so much is coming at you. And it's just so interactive. And there was one time, just to show how interactive it is, I was driving around town. It's just mostly happening here in LA when I was awakening, a little bit up in the Bay Area. And I was so scattered, and I just screamed out as I was driving, God, you take over, you take over. 2 seconds later, oncoming car swerved into my lane, totaled my car, and I couldn't drive anymore. 2 seconds later.
Oh my God.
So God was saying, you need to be still. Right. You're just driving around like a scattered. And then I just had to sit at home, and it was great. It was good for me, you know? So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think, the thing that I also, and we're talking about very personal experiences, and I believe this strongly. I'd love to hear your thought in that when we ask, however we ask it, however our soul needs to or wants to evolve vis-a-vis through this life, it's a very personal experience for everybody. Everybody listening, it's extremely personal to them. So we can share our story. We can maybe give some guideposts or some things to be aware of. But also that personal, like however the symbols need to hit them, however the awakening needs to show up for them, it is a extremely personal. And I don't like when there's a guru, there's a thing in between spirit, God, your guides, all of that. That's like, hey, I can share something with you, but you got to listen.
Yeah.
And then the listening's only going to come through your own desire, of course, on some level, but also your own ability to hear and listen and perceive and receive. And that's a very personal, it's like trying to learn a language.
Yeah.
But I can't teach you your specific language. I can maybe, and you're probably doing it too, you can probably, hey, be aware of this or this and this.
Of course. There's no way. It's absolutely so personal. And one of my main awakenings was this phrase, and it really saved me. I didn't want to miss opportunities, so I say, I am the door that opens. And like you just said, that person has to open their own door, and then it will come. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, like you just said, Catholicism, and I don't want to blame Catholicism. I was raised Catholic. There's many beautiful parts of it, but Christianity likes to
religion itself.
Right. Because there's so many beautiful parts of them, but the institutional parts want to separate us from God and say, well, you have to come through us.
Right.
And I don't believe that's true. And there's also this erasure of the idea of transformation in Christianity specifically, but Eastern religions, it's fundamental, and that goes pretty deep. I believe, erased, in Jesus' lost years, 12 to 30, he's not written about. Like, what was he doing?
Right.
And there's all these accounts of him traveling and learning and growing and transforming.
Yeah.
And I personally believed he was transforming. That's the way. That's the path.
Yeah.
And so we erase that, and so we think, oh no, there's no transformation, but there is, and it's highly personal. Mm-hmm. A really good example of personalized messages is so. For instance, I still fancy myself to be an athlete, and if like the thing that gets me is if I feel a twinge in my hamstring, I think, okay, what did I do? What's this message? My wife is a singer. If she gets hoarse, she's like, what did I do? Mm-hmm. They wouldn't reach me if I got hoarse. They were like, well, I'll be okay. Right. Her hamstring, she just walks, she's fine. Right. So it's very personalized. Yeah. So interpreting those messages, for sure. One more phase. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
One more phase is, and these are fundamental, is, get still and resensitize. Mm-hmm. We have, as I said before, we have these antennae, and most of them are broken and dulled, and we think in third dimensional space, but we are multidimensional beings. Mm-hmm. And, we're like iPhones with unupdated software. We can't tune in, and a better analogy I would say is we think that we are cars driving down the road, and we're like, yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm fast. I can turn, I can steer, as we navigate life. But we're F-16 fighter jets just rolling down the runway. We don't realize if we learn to use the controls, we can fly. We can go supersonic. We can do all kinds of things, Mm-hmm. And so, part of that is developing the clairs, which is clairvoyant, claircognizant, clairaudient, developing those. And there's a lot of guidance about that. Those are your base tools to really get what's going on outside of you and around you and in you. Mm-hmm. And, sort of get into the space where you're doing things that are almost miraculous because people don't understand them, and that's when I started And it was like banging my head against the wall in the beginning. I was all in my head. So it was really a process. And anyone can learn that, it's just a process. But I started, really hearing my spirit guides. It took me a while to figure out what that was and writing down, again, hundreds and hundreds of pages. And to the point that that's all I did. I mean, I would just write those things down. And then I lost my own sense of self. Like, who am I? What do I think? And it's just this back and forth. And now I'm relatively balanced in that space. But even now, like you say, I can go there, and when my wife and kids leave the house, they'll just go somewhere and they'll come back, and I'm sitting in the same spot. It's like 3 hours later, she's like, "You meditating?" And I was like, "I guess so." Just been right there.
Right.
But anyway, that's an important. That's massive.
Right.
Is developing those.
And do you find that as you integrate, the integrations become, of course, more balanced within your physical being, your mental being, your spiritual being? Do you find that the more balanced you are, the more what's the word? Expressive or integrative or giving or teaching,
Activated.
Like for me, it shows up in like behind the scenes of everything I do is this energy. Like, even though the world doesn't say, I do a docuseries, I do a podcast, I do a community thing, but underneath it, there's a much bigger wave of the reason I do it. And sometimes it just takes a bit to mature in terms of how it's expressed, but I always bring the energy of, I want to continue to create a different way to live for myself and others in the world. And it shows up in a lot of, from health, from alternative energies to growing your own food to building community. It shows up in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
How are you finding kind of this massive spiritual awakening integration with, the professorship and the ecology? Like, how are you kind of working that whole thing?
Yeah, that's a good example and a good question. And you're really talking about, in my terminology, you said it, embodiment and integration, and also purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm still figuring that out as far as integrating all of those, because I still have this life as an athlete, this life as an academic. And, I've started helping people heal kind of one-on-one, just healing, because just to see all parts of themselves, and usually there's a blind spot, and then we just figure it out. And now I realize, again, it's time to start sharing about this, but about, awakening. And all of those, I asked my guides maybe 20 years ago, I said, what question you asked me? I said, how do I integrate all this? I said, which should I do? And they said, do it all.
Right.
So I was like, oh, thanks very much.
Right.
But I guess another short example is the first TEDx talk that I did. I showed the overlap. I said it was called something like how to heal your body and the planet with the same steps. So it's like I try to integrate. I try to integrate, and I really like what you said though, because often we have these. Well, I'll start this way. There's people who are super simplistic, but when you find your purpose, you're a messenger, or you are the message, or you're both. And again, it's very simplistic, but messengers are people like writers, psychics, movie directors, maybe songwriters, where they're a conduit for the message, and they have amazing messages. Their personal presence might not be this elevated, you might not spend a day with them, and probably unexceptional, but their messages, Oh, okay, you ate some.
It's had that happen where I've met somebody like wow, that's underwhelming.
Exactly.
Know?
And that's not their role.
Right.
They're a messenger.
Yeah.
And then there's people who are the message, which is their vibe and their personal presence, and it is the message. And so these are, sometimes amazing performers, sometimes spiritual leaders, sometimes, musicians or actors, their presence. Sometimes it's the matriarch or patriarch of the family that's just this vibe. I never forget meeting very nearby here in Westwood. Walking down the street, 17 years old, Michael Jackson walks by me with his entourage. And he was known to be in that area at that time. He wasn't so famous yet. He was, but... And I had a Letterman's jacket on. This is just how old I am. Well, we're the same age. He had just filmed Thriller video in the Letterman's jacket where he's the... Yeah. And he walks by me, and I said to my sister, she was going to UCLA, and I was still in high school. I said, that was Michael Jackson. She goes, yeah. And he goes, I hear him say, hey, man. So I turned around, and he goes, come here. So I walk up, and he says, I like your jacket. Oh my He's like, God. Where'd you get it? And I was like, I don't know. My mind couldn't function in his energy space.
Right.
I just went to liquid.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. And we were standing there for a long time. When we walked away, I said, how many? He asked me like 5 questions, and he must be used to that because. Right. But anyway, his vibe obviously is so powerful. I never saw him sing in person. I wish. So he's the message. He is a vibe that you have to experience. Mm-hmm. And saw the Dalai Lama speak one time. Is this clarity I had around him? Things like that. And then there's people that are both, who you can do it at any level. The greats in history, Jesus, Krishna, and even people nowadays like Tony Robbins, and really categorically, you're that type of guy. You have messages, and you are a elevated presence in person. We can do it at any level. When I'm at my best, I'm both, but it's just categorical. But knowing which one you are kind of helps. You're like, oh, this is, so then you don't struggle to be this or that, or you just be you. I think my wife is the message. She's a performer, and like in her presence, like, wow, that was great. But she's not necessarily expressing things as a messenger.
Right.
Anyway, now I forgot your question, but maybe I answered it.
No, integration. I think, and again, I think this is, everyone has to answer this for themselves too.
Yeah.
It's like the more I open, the more messages come through, and I am compelled to integrate and put something in the world. I'm just compelled. I'm pulled strongly into it. Like I'm working on a new docu-series right now.
Oh, you are?
Just pulled into it. I love it. And it's like I love showing up in front of a camera, and I love building behind it. I love building that energy, creating the stories, finding the people, like sharing that. It's and the more I show up, the more I'm compelled to do certain things, and the more other things kind of fall away. I used to run around the world and superfood hunt. Now that's kind of like a past, there's another lifetime.
Well, and they say, I like this quote, I don't know who said it, but your passion is what you love to do, and your purpose is what you must do.
Right.
That's the compulsion, And I've always known, ultimately, I've always felt very strongly that my real purpose is to, on as big a scale as possible, simply share these messages. And I don't know how that comes out. Social media is a nice new avenue for that. I've written a couple books about that, but I like expressing myself in person. So I like when I'm in a college classroom, I like that, but I see that happening on a bigger and bigger scale. And I have to figure out how to express that. And we're constantly doing that.
Right.
We're constantly doing that. And an interesting part of the embodiment is, we have these intellectual and spiritual insights, and that's a part of us. And then very often we'll post about those. We see people post about them, and that's beautiful. I'm not shaming them, but they haven't yet integrated it most of the time. It's not into your habits. It's not into your cells. Right. It's not into your subconscious. It's just, hey, I found this idea, and they present it as their own.
And or they want it, but they haven't integrated it.
Exactly.
It's a
we
pass-through.
Share where we're working right now, not what we've conquered, usually.
Right.
Usually. And so, it's like when I was in the middle of my awakening, I was compelled to write a book, and I just self-published it, and it didn't sell very well. And I asked my spirit guides, and they said, no, this was us writing to you. This is your guidebook to keep waking up. And I was like, oh, I thought I was there, but it was just, I was very clearly articulating it, but my life was an absolute mess at the time, absolute mess. So no, I hadn't, integrated it yet. And, it just makes me think another really necessary part of this, and it can be scary or it can be manageable, is what I call complete collapse. Your perception of your identity and your perception of how the world works and what reality is must collapse, because those were fabricated as a mosaic from just pieces all around, education, religion, parents, not consciously.
Right.
And so they have to collapse. And clearly you've had this experience as well, and it's very disorienting. That's a feeling of going insane because the bedrock reality is swept out from under you. And that's really tough. And I actually had so many, it's kind of comical, I had so many breakdowns. And then when you break down, you hit rock bottom, you get emotional, and then you're forced to think in revolutionary ways, and then you have a breakthrough. And I had that so many times over these years that I started to kind of anticipate it, and I thought, oh, I'm getting super discouraged. I see a breakdown coming, and then I saw all the steps, and I would just skip all that and get really excited because I knew a breakthrough was coming. And then everything just, it was from years to weeks to minutes. And then I just, wow, this is accelerating. So it accelerated that breakdown process, and that's what can happen in those intense times,
Yeah, you're right, though. I mean, you even look at today, like there's a lot of people that don't want to, even though many messages come to us from many systems that are at play right now. And you're like, if you don't want to see that they're dangerous, they're corrupt, they're polluting, they're challenging the world at large, whatever, you just pick a system, right?
Yeah.
If you don't want to see that there's potentially people behind that, we don't have to get into conspiratorial things, but just take profit over the health and safety of people is pretty clear that there's no conspiracy around that there's a level of profit that is infinitely more given strength in certain parts of society than any other.
Yeah.
Going back to our point, if we run around the world, you see like, why don't they have clean water, power, food, and shelter? Why is that not there? Why can we go down here in LA and see a bunch of people with mental health issues and there's no one taking care of them? Could we do something with the fourth largest economy on the planet in California? Of course we could. Of course we could be a pillar of infinite super life, for God's sakes, right?
Yeah.
But there's things at play. And so, I think and it's also important not to get bogged down by the things, which is why I've kind of grown to also have this thing against the algorithms and social media. It's like I don't, that they're trying to feed me more of this, of whatever. And I was like, I just don't want any part of it.
Yeah.
So going back to the system breakdown, there is a level of people that absolutely do not want their matrix they don't want to look at that, and they will defend it until they're dead, right? They will defend, they will not give up the reality that this is happening, and just pick, and it happens to all of us, I think, until we're ready. You're like going, holy shit, like this is...
Because it's a lot of effort and a lot of disruption, and I agree. And I have ridiculous examples of that. People you double down so much, and you even know you're wrong. It's just this fear. The
giving up that foundational, even though that foundation is completely delusional.
Yeah,
that's what you've been taught. That's what keeps being taught to you through news or whatever. And then you're just holding that up, and then you just want to go la 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 la. So it does take a level of courage to kind of break through that and kind of build up again. So where are you sitting now with, like, let's go back and we can bounce around here, but you've seen a lot both internally, inside yourself, you've seen a lot in the world. Where do you piece it together now, and what gives you hope? What are you excited about? What do you want to put your energy towards? What can society put their energy towards? Like, I know that's a massive question.
It is.
But like, just off the cuff, where do you see that possibility and opportunity, even in the face of what excites you?
I am inherently an optimist, and I know that in the same way that people's health and the health of the planet have some very obvious problems that can relatively easily be fixed. So that's what gives me hope. I know that we just need the right plumber to come in with the right wrench, and that's, of course, 1,000 different angles. And so that's some of what gives me hope. I also feel like what gives me hope, because people ask me this a lot, actually, it's a good question. I mean, it's a common question, but also it's be one example of the truth, because I talk a lot about, it's my job really as a professor, or I write books, and I talk a lot about it, and that's really important. You got to spread messages. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of evolving into a space where I realize, make one real existing example of the truth that you want to see. And I believe that I am that. I'm a good force in the world, but I mean, be a community with a microsolar grid. Mm-hmm. Create that backyard garden like you have. Mm-hmm. Mega. Looks amazing. And so the more little examples we see like that, there's this, this critical mass. And so that's what encourages me. I think, you can't, it gets scary when you try to monolithically take down these systems, and and we do have to chip away. Yeah. But I think that when we start small and make something that actually exists. It creates these aha moments, and it creates a vibrational reality and a seed where people feel it, and sort of by osmosis they think, yeah, I can do that. Those are incredibly encouraging to me. One of my previous books, I just interviewed 100 business owners that are moving the world in the right direction. Because I want people to say, look, we are solving these problems. Yeah. I don't want to be, doom and gloom. Yeah. And I see my role as mostly, clearly being a guide, and clearly articulating where we need to go. But when that, as I move forward, really, again, I want to just solve basic problems, which is change how we grow food, change how we produce energy, on local levels, but larger and larger levels, and starting to look at some partnerships there. But so that's practical solutions, and over here it's guiding narratives, because I see that guiding narratives and helping shift beliefs is absolutely fundamental, and we're not conditioned in I see that our subconscious limits and limiting beliefs and unupdated beliefs, I think, is our biggest limitation in the Western world, because of how we're conditioned. Again, by the evolution of philosophical thought from European Enlightenment and some of our religious influences. And so we're detached from those, and those can remain stagnant and really hold us back. And I always say that, the smarter you are, the problem with smart people is they believe everything they think, and I was one of those people. I was in my head. And we have to, I love smart people. I'm just saying we have to be able to be both, right, and head and heart. And right, when we get there and we access those, it's going to help us shift. And I do believe in sea change, and I do believe in, and that comes back to those morphic resonance fields where at a certain point, everyone just knows something. Yeah. And so for all those reasons, I'm optimistic.
Yeah. I would echo that, and going back to what you said about the small changes that you can make, by doing those, you instantly change your field. And then that field is also resonant to other people. So you'll actually start running into other people with those same beliefs.
100%. Immediately.
Right? And it's exponential. And I think part of the survival of my optimism comes by way of the people around me. Like a good friend of mine, it's Troy Swope, got a company called Darin Labs. Well, guess what they created? Algae-based, plant-based alternative to PFAS at scale.
Wow.
At scale. Like it's already in the
How have I
world.
not heard? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, because it's fairly brand new, but it's
Mostly for non-stick surfaces or for what?
non-stick surfaces right now, right?
Wow.
So it's in
That's huge.
It's in some massive fast food businesses, right? The wrappers.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
already changed. No one knows about it.
I learned about that from your book. I didn't know PFAS was on the wrappers of these burgers. It's just
Right?
diabolical.
It's diabolical. It's everywhere. So it's it's heat resistant, it's stain resistant. It's all
It's incredible. I mean,
right. So he's one example. Another, Chris Patton, who I've had on my podcast a couple times. I can't even tell the world but 2% of what this guy's doing. And talking to him every week about the alternative energy stuff that he's absolutely doing in the world that probably will never even be talked about, but will be infesting in a good way the society. So Paul Hawken, the work he's doing, and the work he's doing with some big companies and stuff, and like these kinds of people would only be in my life. They wouldn't be in my life if I hadn't said yes to a bunch of small things that I have continued to continue to believe in and do myself.
yeah.
And it becomes, then they are inspiring me, and I'm then I'm trying to share, and then I'm meeting you, and like it's all of these types of things that give me so much more optimism than left by myself.
Yeah.
Because they're badass people and they're committed to their thing, and I love what you said, that you can do one thing, and number one, make your life better and healthier in your family, and support your community, and then lean in more to the next habit, and then your field, in the integrative field of awareness with action, I think is exponentially one of the healthiest things you can do. It's not just about filter your water and drink that clean water.
Yeah.
It's I'm doing something because I love myself. I'm doing something because, number one, I have the awareness that there might be pollutants in there. Yeah. And now it means so much to me to not have those in. Yeah. And then, right? So all of these things added up. That's how things change, right?
Yeah. And I like what you said earlier about, and it's obvious, but it needs to be said, how incredibly individualized it is, because when you elevate your field, you start to realize your purpose and your role. And that's super important. And you start to realize, this is where I'm leaning, this is what feels natural to me. And we do get stuck in societal roles, but when we find, I love stories about like, I can't remember if it was Stravinsky or Tchaikovsky was a lawyer until he was like 30, and then he was like, you know what, I want to write music. And his parents were like, no, you idiot, why would you do that?
Right.
But I love stories like that.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge part of it, because we have to give our gift, and you just get in a space like you're talking about your docuseries. You're like, this is where I need to be, and that's, I think both of us, you've done TV, you've done books, you do this podcast, both of us, and you're doing it on a massive level, are the storytellers, and we need storytellers. We need people that guide the narrative, because I thought, should I make better solar panels, more efficient? Should I be a farmer like my parents were, both of them? And I like those things, but I realized, no, I think I'm a talker, and I'm a listener, and I'm a receiver, and I'm a guide, and so that's my role. And so once we realize what our role is, and against all odds and against all, we do that. It's amazing. I joke with my wife a lot. I say, we got to do what we're supposed to do, because if I had to go sing and entertain people and you had to give geography lectures, the world would not function, and it would be not good. She'd probably do better than me. But yeah, so that's huge, and there's so many things in the way of us doing that. But it's we have, again, your word, sovereignty, and when we claim it, everything shifts, from the inside out.
Well, and just think about that example you gave of like if you reverse roles with your parent, with your wife, and again, we're being told this is what we should do, and that's kind of part of the upbringing. Like
Yeah.
our parents only know what they know, and you should be a
Yeah.
doctor, you should be a
Yeah.
lawyer, you should be all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it does take this self-reflection of going, yeah, but what do I really want to do?
Yeah.
And then sitting in that soul and taking action in that. I don't know if there's anything more fulfilling.
Yeah. And you can just feel it that you're on the right course. And for a while, I remember Gary Vaynerchuk, I can't remember how to say his last name, but Gary V said,
Oh yeah.
he said, do your day job, keep your day job, but then afterwards, just grind on that, that speciality until it can take over.
Exactly.
And, right now my day job is the professorship, which I love, but grinding is helping people heal and helping people awaken and guiding that narrative. And I feel unbelievably alive when I do that and like I'm in the right place, But, yeah, I mean, there's one idea I wanted to put forth as well,
Sure.
just this last, which is a really important part of the process and just a tool. And I wanted to give a little gift to anyone who's listening, is these couple sentences, but reframing. To reframe anything that happens in your life is an unbelievable skill. We just label things good and bad, but the universe isn't really moral, it's magnetic. And so, and if we see, everything that's happening to us as working in our favor, we stop labeling it. And I know this lingo, but it's important to say. And, if anyone's listening or watching and they're in a lot of pain, or they know someone that's in a lot of pain, these two sentences really helped me and can really help you. Literally write them down, put them in your phone, and just keep them. One is, what is the bigger, more beautiful truth that I'm not seeing here? Yeah. Because your pain is real, but we get myopically focused on the pain, and we forget the context, which is always something incredibly beautiful. The second one is, why is this the best thing that could have happened to me? And that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Especially in some situations, you lose a loved one. I mean, that's really, really tough. But in most of those situations, you realize on some level, your soul, subconsciously or consciously, you called this forth. It's sort of an answer to your prayers. Because, if you say to God, I want to be rich, I want to be strong, I want to be a great, loving partner, doesn't just give you those things necessarily. You get the conditions that make you change so that you become that. Yeah. And those conditions are difficult things, usually. Yeah. And so that's reframing, and that's an unbelievably important skill.
It's a huge. If people just take that in for a second, I'll give you an example. I'll give an example of that can maybe help when things get really gnarly. And that's the hardest thing in my life that happened is when my dad died, right? So in that moment, you're like, holy shit, right? My dad just passed away of alcoholism, and he was, at that time, he was a tricky guy as a father for a big part of my life, but we were really good friends later in life. When that happened, there was a lot of pain and grief, and of course, throughout our entire family and myself included. However, if I were to ask that question in that moment or whatever, I ask it now because I do have the experience that I feel closer to him and he's still around, right? There's moments even like 2 weeks ago where I had something and I've kind of like, he popped in, like he was there. And I shared with him, like going, I miss you physically, but this is what's going on. We celebrated like a moment, right? So the point is that there was a gift in his passing in the ability for him to be closer to me without the challenges that he had in his life. Right? So his ability to love is unimpeded. Right. at this point. So
It's a great example, and you talked about that well in your book.
yeah. So those types of things are, but yeah, it's a courageous question. Like it's
tough.
Yeah.
But when you're in a crisis, you need those tough questions because it's actually soothing, because you're in so much pain, you know, and at least it lets you look at it in a new way. But because I was down and out for so long, and I developed some of these life states, it's like throwing a life raft.
Yeah. And it's that understanding that what if all of life is happening for you? Your little brain can't figure it out all at one time.
Yeah.
You know, and
I mean, goodness gracious. Yeah. And so, I mean, I couldn't function for so long and for years. I mean, I was living, thank God for my sister. She was the one that really understood what was going on with me. And she was like, you can live with me. Everything's okay. And never would have made it without her. This is in Manhattan Beach. I mean, it's beachfront Manhattan Beach. That was like a nice place to go through a terrible time. But I would walk out of the house. I'd say, yeah, I'm going to go get some orange juice. She'd say, okay, it's a corner store. I come back 7 hours later without the orange juice. She's like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know where I was, just in outer space, you know?
Wow.
So, I mean, there was like 3 years of that. And she was just right there. But it was, and again, I don't want to scare people, like you said. On one hand, I want to say, in the ancient Hatha yogic texts about Kundalini awakenings actually do caution. They say, look, you're opening up some powerful stuff. Don't be cavalier like Darin and Greg were. Have some caution, some respect.
Yeah.
But it's, it's massive what's about to happen here. And so I want to help people have that, reasonable caution, but still have a sort of a successful journey. And just kind of want to make, part of me talking about it today, and I'm so happy you brought me on, is just to make it less of a taboo maybe to talk about, or, just a little bit more approachable. And some people are saying, oh my God, yeah, I've had that experience. Or maybe they've wanted to, and they want to, so just hearing people talk about it, because the world's waking up, and a lot of us are going to have these really, really massive awakenings. And there's so many levels of that even. And, some people had them in a past life, and now I call it, they have a path of light. Everything's kind of smooth, And I wondered about that. And so I sort of asked, and they said, oh, your friend, she has a path of light. And I was like, oh, well. I had a great golden childhood, but then I had a dark night of the soul for sure. I mean, whoa.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of different ways, and like you said, it's super personalized. But we don't have to be scared. We should be respectful and look for like-minded people. Like you said, that helps immensely, because it tends to kind of make us become hermits, and that's part of it. You got to get away,
Yeah. Be still, be silent, listen. Yeah.
Complete stillness. A really interesting way to get complete stillness, super simple. Watch a sunset from when the sun is up to when it actually goes down, and stay there until the light completely changes to darkness. So you're actually so still that celestial objects are orbiting around you, and you are still, and the entire color and visuals change. It really is a centering feeling, So you have to sit there for about an hour for that. I did that a lot to just feel steady, so that God didn't have to give me any more head-on collisions.
Yeah. Dude, thank you for sharing your story. It means a lot to me, and there's a lot of parallels. But yeah, it doesn't have to be scary for people. It can be unique to them, and I'm stoked you shared. There's a lot more we can unpack, especially around many of this stuff. But thanks for opening up today.
Absolutely. Thanks for giving me the avenue. And I knew we had similar experiences, and I almost feel selfish for sharing so much about mine, because we have similar. But I think it was nice. So thank you as well.
Yeah, brother. Thank you, brother. Cheers.
Cheers.